Hi everybody, you're watching The Culture Cave. I am returning to a book review which I started a while back. It's a very significant piece of literature from a book which I picked up in the largest book town in the world, namely Jimbocho in Tokyo. And viewers may remember a couple of years back I was talking about this particular book, which is called Searching for the Dharma, Finding Salvation, Buddhist Pilgrimage in Time and Space. Now, regardless of your spiritual background, if any, I think it's good to be aware of the way people live and what makes people tick in the world spiritually. So this short series is for everyone who wants to understand the world, and in particular the Asian part of the world and Buddhist practice at large, a practice which has become increasingly popular over the decades, let's face it. What's so wonderful about this book is that it gives us it gives us a unique perspective on what pilgrimage actually means in the Buddhist sense. It also talks a lot about the Tibetan principles of it and how we can tap into it. And for this episode, previously I was talking about some of the earlier chapters of this piece of literature. As I'm about to return myself to the Mekong River area on some travels, an area which I travelled quite extensively on for about 3 weeks in 2019. This book actually talks about the pilgrimage to Mount Ka and how this connects to the bardos. So these states, these in-between states where we reach these glimpses of enlightenment in life, and how pilgrimage ties into that. So this is a fascinating chapter, and I was just speed reading actually while packing for my journey, and once again I'm blown away by the book. It mentions the snow mountain, the white snow mountain, namely the Mount Ka Ba Dakar Po, and it talks about the divide between the Mekong and the Salween River basins on the border between Yunnan and Chabarong. The elevation of the mountain is significant as it's 6,740 meters, and it's the highest mountain in modern Yunnan province, and it is one of the most sacred of all of the mountains of the Khampas, who consider it as their most important territorial god. And up until now the mountain is unconquered. The various expeditions that tried to climb it in the 1980s and 90s never reached the top due to difficult weather conditions. So the key part of pilgrimage, in fact in any religious practice at large, is this idea of suffering and how suffering is inevitable in life. And as we go through life, we realise this more and more, that suffering is not only inevitable but it's unavoidable. Pilgrimage holds a lot of metaphors for this. This chapter talks a lot about the physical manifestation of what it means to suffer, and I suppose as I reflect on this chapter, what really stands out to me, and this is also a rhetorical question, is pilgrimage, is it not a controlled form of suffering? And the reason I bring that up is because on this particular pilgrimage of this mountain, there are some symbols. There's a lot of symbolism going on. The chapter reads, being spontaneously erected, the silvery snow mountain has the nature of a stupa. So it's that idea of height and challenge. Being spontaneously untamable, the blue juniper has the symbolic form of the mountain deity. Being uncontrollable, the river has the nature of the oblation water. Being unbeatable, the La, Klu and Gunyan have the nature of the guards of the mountain. So it's that idea of the unsurmountable. So something to think about. And in a supreme sacred place as Kaba Dakar Po, the Butsan of wrong, humans with physical form have climbed on the head of the Lord of Snow. The stupa performed then all sorts of magical displays, and snow dust spontaneously piled up into a heap. Again, this is all open to interpretation. What does magic mean to you? You know, the magic of being alive, is it a miracle in itself, is it not? But with this snow dust, men were buried in the deep snow in just one instant. Again, the idea of the impermanence crops up here. The chapter also brings up the idea of caves, and how narrow passages in caves actually have a deeper meaning in terms of the uncomfortable feeling that we may have in a cave, or dangerous weather conditions on these really challenging pilgrimages. And what does that really mean? Well, it connects to the suffering, and it's that human curiosity to lean into that suffering. And the awareness of that, I think the awareness that suffering is inevitable, again, it automatically translates to, I suppose, perhaps wanting to conquer that suffering in an organised pilgrimage, as this book so eloquently describes. The idea as well of the length and the suffering of the pilgrim walk. Buddhists and Bonpos alike circumambulate the mountain, each in the direction conforming to their respective traditions. You know, the all-encompassing nature of pilgrimage. You can do it in your own way to some extent. Most of the pilgrims were Kampa, a type of people, which confirms Kaba Dakar Po's status as a local deity. Many among them did this long and difficult pilgrimage in 7 days only, so the idea of this finite time in which to complete it, which requires walking between 15 and 18 hours a day. Again, a beautiful extract from a great Tibetan yogin of the 19th century, namely Zabz Dakar, who lived 1781 to 1851, coming back from Sari, expressed his thoughts in a song which draws a parallel between the difficulties of circumambulating the mountain and the numerous traps that the deceased encounter in Bardo. When I made the pilgrimage of the Tsari ravines, when traversing with difficulty the treacherous paths, the rivers and bridges of the land of Lo, it occurred to me that it must indeed be like this when travelling the perilous paths of the Bardo. So the suffering is inevitable, potentially even welcomed.